portion, audience portion. With regards to Bob's question, the JED dollars go only for infrastructure, and it's to develop and improve that area to increase that revenue. I've spoken about that before. We have no plans besides infrastructure. There's no plans, and it has been a consistent philosophy of this board with regards to public projects like no swimming pools, no town hall buildings. The idea is that the thought of that mixed use would be called a town center. Doesn't mean that there would be a town hall there. It's an impossibility without a vote to move town hall or to build a town hall. That requires a citizens vote township-wide. I thought he mentioned something else about, anything else you want?
Yeah, the only thing I would say about, he was basically just asking about the use of the JED revenue. Obviously, when we established the JED, it was designed to, over time, to be able to be a revenue source to balance out what was initially two major nonprofits, University Hospitals and Lake Health, taking for-profit property off the payrolls, and then having development that would increase our costs in terms of services and infrastructure and all things of that nature. So the genesis of the JED was to create a new revenue stream that Concord did not previously have because of what those
loss of property value there.
Right. Well, what that development spurred, and I think at the time was the feeling that the corridor itself would start to develop, and then therefore it would be important for the township to capture and maximize those revenue streams. It's sort of referencing to Bob's, about pools and things. There's, JED dollars are not going to be used for those things. Proper use of JED dollars under the spirit of the law always revolve around economic development. Communities are allowed to put that money into their general fund for other purposes that as it relates to the benefit of the community as a whole. Currently, we are using those JED revenues to pay off the road construction on Capitol Parkway and that new interchange, which also included some sewer extensions on Cryle and some other infrastructure components. Our anticipation is that will probably be completed in about 36 months from this time in terms of the final bills on that being paid off. So we dedicated those revenues towards those types of things, and that is what the legislature, when they established the JED legislation years ago, that was their intention for the purposes of that. And as you've always pointed out as well, it was also designed for townships to be able to try to push back on and avoid annexation.
Well, and with that, there was a significant change a couple years ago on slapping the wrist where people were misusing JEDs, and the legislature lashed out. And so I always believe that there's got to be, as you start to use as that funding source that you arrive from that JED, and you've improved those infrastructure dollars. I think only after then can you use that in your general fund with a nexus of maybe the issue. So for instance, as the corridor kind of builds out, there may become other problems down on Girdle Road.
The idea is you can spend it on more sheriff services. You can spend it on those things that revolve around that development so that it doesn't come out of residential property tax.
Or the problems it creates, whether that's traffic, whether that's other problems with other intersections, other roads. So that's how I saw that.
So I mean, we've always treated the JED, as you know, as a work in progress in terms of the desire to grow. We've added new partners since it was launched back in 2008. We've added new properties, new businesses along the way. We continue to do that and push for that because we believe that growing it and growing those revenues is going to be good for Concord long term in terms of sustainability, because the community has to have that balance. As it relates to just, Bob's comment about just putting it in the bank, I think there's two ways to look at that. One, from a legal standpoint, a township cannot hold on to revenue for more than 5 years. So we're not allowed to just take money and pool it forever. The law makes us spend it. So you don't have the luxury of just pooling infinite amounts of dollars.
Well, the philosophy is that you're supposed to put it into the roads.
Putting it into the roads or safety, and right,
Plow
correct.
trucks, all that.
And then, beyond that, I think as the JED is still sort of in its infancy, it's important that you take a look at it in terms of what are the things you're doing with those revenues to continue to grow it. Meaning, if you just take all the dollars you're getting this year, which is a little over $600,000, that's our shares as the township. If you start taking that out and just drawing on it and spending it on things around the township, that'll make you feel real good in the short term, but you may miss an opportunity to be able to do some additional investment in that corridor, which would allow for more business and commercial development, which would obviously over time grow the pot. My thought process has always been that there is a point where the revenue stream is large enough that you can start to siphon off some of that for those types of projects that you referenced, and then also maintaining some of that revenue stream for reinvestment into the commercial development within the corridor. What that doesn't mean is that that Concord is the one out building buildings and doing all the rest of that kind of stuff. That's private development stuff, and is not the township's business. I look at that like it's the job of a government, whether it's federal, state, or local, is to within you look at things like economic development. It is our job to be the setters of the table. So think about Thanksgiving. It's our job to make sure that the table is there. There's a tablecloth, there's silverware, there's bowls and plates and cups, and that's things like safety services, police, roads, sewers, infrastructure. It's our job to make sure that it's competitive, that it's well designed and situated, and so that then it's the private sector that cooks the meal. It's the private sector that fills the cup and the bowl and takes advantage of those things. As well therefore then your citizens are the ones that get to sit at that table and enjoy the fruits of the private sector and what the public end has invested in terms of the infrastructure, i.e. the table. So I think there's two ways to look at it. I think I tend to look at it from a long-term planning standpoint. I think the reference that Bob made about real estate and the concrete stamping, if you all will recall, we were approached by a business that wanted to locate a concrete stamping plant on Prile Road, which at the time was in the BX in zoned area. Wanted to locate on Prile Road right along, well actually I think right where Drug Mart is actually, right where Drug Mart's going. So backing up to Wetlands and Quail Hollow Country Club. They approached us, they wanted to move here and put it in. We had some concerns about what the nature of their process was in terms of how it fit within our zoning code. The first thing we did was we said that is a really bad location for you to want to locate. You can come here and come to the BZA and apply and ask to be allowed to locate there. But we told them that that's, from a public relations standpoint, that's a really bad idea. That is a commercial area that goes against soft uses like residential and Quail and the golf course.
I thought that was found to be heavy manufacturing.
So, all right. So then what we did was,
I mean, you had to go out there, Mike.
Yeah.
So prior to that finding, we had directed them to the property that Mr. Monroe is the attorney for that property owner, and said, why don't you talk to them about land acquisition? If you can work something out, let's also go look at your operation and make a determination. Zoning and Mike made a determination that it was not in fact light manufacturing, that it was heavy manufacturing, and that did not belong in that zoning category. Back on discovery, they came to the BZA. They asked the BZA to override that administrative decision and declare them as light manufacturing. The BZA did not do that and denied their application to be considered light manufacturing, light industrial, so that they could locate back there. So that's what Bob was referring to. I think.
And again, I don't think anybody would have liked it there.
No, I don't think so.
If this mixed use is a
But I think that's an
concern,
example
that would
of where the process worked exactly how it's supposed to.
Sure.
Noisy, dirty.
You want me to, Mr. Massey had a question?
Yeah, you want to address that, or I
Sure.
can address that?
Mr. Monroe is not the landowner. He is one of the attorneys representing the landowner. He works with also their real estate agent. The landowner is, in fact, heirs to the Lennon family. In fact, it's Fred Lennon's daughter, Kathy Lennon. If those of you who know, Fred Lennon was a former industrialist and founder of Swage Lock. They developed that property on Capitol and Discovery and had facilities down there at one time and then vacated them. In relation to the Mr. Monroe's comments, the RFP that Concord Township issued revolved around the 7 acres that Concord Township owns. It also included, either by MOU or by permission of other adjoining property owners that wish to be included in the process, making it known to anyone that may be interested that they would also entertain offers on their property. As we know, Mr. Monroe represents the landowner. The landowner is actively looking to sell that property, and we have a letter from their realtor, Mr. West, to that effect. So the RFP itself does not, although it does speak to the idea that someone could approach property owners and acquire property if they so choose, and present a plan if they so choose, it really actually revolves around the 7 acres that Concord Township owns. Did I accurately? Yes.
And there's not a contract there and we're not in any contract with.
There's no binding agreement.
With Mr.
No
Monroe.
reference to that.
And it's also not unusual to be in get proposals or discussions about proposals with regards to, land development. It happens consistently, at least, that you always have inquiries, and I always say, and a couple things. Vanessa, you and I had at least a squabble maybe. But I'm going to ask that you kind of look back when I went to First and Main in Hudson back in June of 2006. And I thought you and I had a conversation that suggested, and I had the transcripts that suggested that you were pleased with that, with us looking over there, and that you thought we'd develop a somewhat mixed-use development like Hudson at that time. And I don't want to put you on a spot, so we can get you the transcripts, but I think back in June of 2006 we had a discussion. And
Mixed use was fine, and in 2006, you weren't looking at residential in 2006, so I was fine with the mixed use development with no residential, sure.
and I will also, I'll be more than happy to have a longer discussion with you about that anytime. Maybe more in depth. And then the result of that is that we had at the time a business advisory committee, and that business advisory committee had a group of people from Concord Township. The result of that found us in a proposal, or at least discussions with Panzeca, and at the time, Mr. Marlowe, I believe your wife, got us in touch and offered a proposal for, again, a mixed-use development of about 57 acres over by where the roundabout is. And again, basically what it is the front end of some of the discussion of this 107 acres. So it's the properties that are directly around that roundabout that we had discussions with. And again, that was another mixed use, although I think mixed use does have some residential in it, but nominal. I guess it depends on what someone considers high density. So, you know, as Mr. Cruz mentioned, it's not our intent to have any dollars and cents into any type of development over at the town hall center, or town center. It's not town hall center, town center. You refer to it as a town hall center. It's not supposed to have our town hall there. We're not supposed to be developers. The purchase of that 7 acres with the JED funds was an investment that allowed us to place our money for a time being, for an investment. Also had the ability to kind of at least have some control of what would be developed over there, to have some say, because quite frankly, whoever comes over there to develop it, we're going to know exactly what they're going to develop, because we're going to sell it to them, and that would be probably part of those stipulations. So it was for control, and what we believe in the betterment of Concord Township, so that as that area develops, it develops with a way that, you know, Concord Township thinks it should develop, and gives back to the township as an amenity instead of some type of distraction.
I just want to make
Sure, go ahead.
clear for Mr. Cruz, because his question was very short to the point, which was, are we moving the town hall over there? The answer is no.
Absolutely
And
not.
we've said that on the record, I don't know how many dozens of times, but no. The town hall stays here. This is the town hall. This is a historic building, and a very special building, and we're not moving a town hall or, you know, over to that area. So, Mr. Wiggin had some questions.
Mr. Wiggins' questions regarding, most of his issues are with the under the jurisdiction of the county engineer's office, but the county engineer's office has been called regarding a couple of those projects. They were also called on the Crowell Road issue and those signs, because they do have a sign maker in there, and we've asked them for some additional signage. The position of some is that, you know, too many signs and you get confused, but at that intersection at this point, I think the signs should be bigger at least, if not additional ones. But I think we've ordered some bigger signs, and hopefully that would help.
I would point out to his question about Cryle, and I believe he means the southern end of Cryle 84 lumber. We petitioned, and ODOT agreed to, initially our agreement with ODOT was that we would split the cost, but they've agreed to actually foot the whole bill, to do a study of Auburn, Girdled, 44, Cryle, and Auburn, where all that comes together, because we know that that is a poorly planned intersection area that's congested, and especially if you've been there when Auburn's in session, sometime between 3 and 5:30, it gets, you know, backed up at stop signs and whatnot. So ODOT is going to, in fact, be doing an analysis of that and start the planning process of how that can be re-engineered. They're also tying it in, why they agreed to pick up our half of the cost was, that we had offered, was they're going to tie it in now to some of the interchanges down 44 towards Chardon, where they've had a couple of fatal accidents. So they're going to look at those as well, and broaden it a little bit bigger beyond Concord. So they felt that it was, you know, that it was appropriate that they foot the bill for the entire analysis. So that is supposed to be starting, that analysis is supposed to be starting, I believe, you know, like October or so. They're going to begin that process, and we'll get updates from them. I'm curious to see where the solutions in that from that study start to come out, how they may reconfigure our section of that down there by Girdle Road. It can only help. So
And they also plan on widening Cryle Road. We're going to put a turn lane in Cryle Road.
Right, there was some discussion of that with the county. The county has that as part of their long-term project. They have a fund set aside that developers are now submitting revenue into when they develop. So like the Starbucks development crossing, Drug Mart, are putting into a fund so that the county can widen Cryle into, put in a turn lane down the length of Cryle. And of course, there's sections of it that need to be probably full depth repair, I think. An odd thing that was discovered as part of this process is that when 44 was done, it was actually, in fact, Cryle is actually still a state road and not a county road.
Yeah, there's a fight over who owns Cryle Road right now between the state and the county.
And I like what he said about millennials, because we want to attract more young people to Concord Township so that we'll have a healthy future.
Well said.
I guess the additional thing that Mr. Lazuka asked with regards to the survey, you know, my position is that there was a survey done in 2004. That survey in 2004 produced the Concord Township Comprehensive Plan of 2004. One of the recommendations that list in there on page 57 is mixed-use centers, areas where the township would like to provide housing options and support a goal of providing a community town center and other mixed-use areas. So, you know, the position of at least this board was when we got in office and there was a 2004 survey and then the 2004 comprehensive plan, that's what got us looking at our mixed-use development. We did some work with Kent State and drafting some I guess visions of that. 2004?
Yeah, page 40 of the 2004 comprehensive plan.
Page 57.
No, I'm saying, could you go to reference page 40?
I don't-
Survey results.
Yeah, I don't
Number
have-
7, the township is strongly opposes apartments and townhomes.
And I think that's something that we'll have to address in that legislation, okay?
That's the people's speech.
So, and I don't disagree with you, and I guess I will, you know, I have asked, we have some other things to discuss here, but I've asked administration to go ahead and look at some additional language or changes in language so that we would be making, or at least having some discussion about amendments for the overlay district that addresses those issues.
No,
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to.
Is the audience portion open?
No, it's not open, but I
you
just,
engage.
yeah.
May I ask a question though?
So-
No.
Your reply?
No.
I can't,
No.
so it's just one way only? I just have a question about, I have something to say about this statement, and then another question.
I know.
About the survey.
You could, I'm sure you'll be back here to ask us more, you can talk to us afterwards. That's it.
The survey, 30.3% of the employees surveyed.
Please,
responded
please.
to closer to 10.
Come on, listen, what we're not gonna have is, we're gonna have what took place yesterday. What took place yesterday was very disturbing to me. I found it hurtful to the community. It was rude, and I'm not gonna allow another meeting to go down that road again.
Are you going to answer my question? Because you skipped me.
Excuse me, if you're gonna speak, you have to come up at the ask of the chairman, and that's it.
The audience
And one
portion,
person at a time.
audience portion is closed.
You're not going to.
Mr. Chairman, I would
Yeah.
like to just continue along with some of the questions that we had.
Sure, go ahead.
I think the next one on the list was actually Mrs. LeConte. She had referenced Eric Reisinger and his firm, Reisinger and Associates, and then made reference that that asked the question of, are we letting some from Chicago come in here and develop this? The answer is no. Mr. Reisinger is not a developer. Mr. Reisinger is an architect and a planner. And his services and his firm's services were retained because of their expertise in commercial development, specifically mixed use, and also just a broad variety of background on those matters. Xenophobia aside, their being from Chicago is not a disqualifier for being a qualified applicant or a qualified consultant.
Ben's local here, right? He's
One of their
What's that?
associates is Ben Fearman, and he is local from, he lives in Hudson. So, just to clarify for folks at home that
To
the
clarify,
rising
did
or
you
so.
call me a xenophobe in a public forum?
I said xenophobia aside, xenophobia meaning fear of outsiders.
Is that, I have no fear of outsiders, Chris.
Well, you're, all right, I see this is what I, this is
Why
where
did
we,
you
this is where we
literally call me
can't,
a name in a public forum?
didn't call you a name.
A xenophobe
I referenced-
is a
okay.
name.
Let's move on.
This is why we can't have nice things. All right.
Yes, you cannot.
Let's
talk
go to new
about this
business.
person you call
I
me.
want to, actually, no, I want to finish this, Mr. Chairman, and just address a couple things. So, Mr. Reisinger was, and his firm was retained for their services. I believe they've done a very admirable job, a very nice job in terms of what they've been asked to do. I would also point out that they worked with the Lake County YMCA on developing their strategic plan for their long-term process, so they're quite familiar with the marketplace and what goes on in Lake County. And they've also worked with a number of other communities in Northeast Ohio. They're working currently with the City of Painesville, and they've also worked with the City of Wadsworth, correct, on their very large multi-agency project. So then just to address some other things. There was reference to a comment that was made on my personal Facebook post, and although I appreciate the cyber stalking, it's my private Facebook post, my private
Yeah, you called me a
Facebook,
stalker.
my private Facebook, which is mine.
I was looking up information on public
I
that you had public and then you made it private.
Ma'am, please.
don't.
Please.
You can, anybody can go on and, look at Facebook, and that's fine. But the suggestion that was made up at the podium was that I had done something nefarious on my Facebook page, where I talk about a variety. You want to talk about Buckeye football, or you name it. We all do it, right? It's all the same type of stuff. So I have a right to have my Facebook page as I see fit. The topics that I choose to talk about are of my choice. It's fine for someone, if they want to go and look at it, if it's public, they can go and read it. But to then accuse me of having done something nefarious on my Facebook page, I find a bit odd. To set the record straight, the post has not been deleted. It is still there. The post is from a friend of mine, Mr. Jim Trachis, who, when I posted the article that had been done in the News Herald, he had a comment, and he said, "Be careful. So many developers expect the taxpayers to subsidize their investments. Independents found this out. So many want to use TIFs to pay for their investment and land donations," referring to what developers sometimes demand or ask. He said, "Essentially no risk and all profit." He said, "I urge you to set parameters about public participation before you go out for proposals. We did not, and found out that someone was willing to build a mixed-use project and profit from it, but not put much of any cash on the barrelhead to actually invest in the project, urging caution." That was on July 2nd. Also on July 2nd, and therefore not also mentioned in Mrs. LeConte's comments, was I commented on it that same morning and said, "Totally agree. And we do not have to accept anything that isn't acceptable, period." And the point I was making was, he's correct. And we have seen these types of mistakes that have been made in other communities. And I know it is the position of this board that, public participation has to be limited. It has to be involved, if it involves anything, it involves things like infrastructure. That's, again, back to the JED revenue that we talked about, and the JED is a vehicle for those things and what that is about. So I just wanted to clarify my personal Facebook and comments on it. Should we just go on to Mrs.
Yeah.
Pesick's?
I just
Sure.
want to say, when you call people names in a public forum, this is why people don't get involved in politics, but I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank
You,
you. Despite
you are, you, all you do
Mr.
is
Gall-
come to
Mr.
meetings
Galloway.
and interrupt and interrupt,
Mr.
interrupt, and you attack and you say things about other people, but then you feel like that therefore you are above any sort of recrimination. So I'm not going to get into it with you because that's what you want. It's
Yeah, why don't we
exactly what you
address
wanted last
Mrs.
time.
Pesick?
I think you're-
So Mrs. Pesick had some questions or some comments really just about mixed use and as it relates to commercial space. Just to speak a little bit to Mr. Monroe's points regarding business development and their ability to attract other light industrial for their remaining portions of the property, well, actually for their entire property. Several things I would say to that. One, there is, that property has been for sale and available for, I don't want to say 30 years, but it's been a long time.
29 years?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time. And if you look at the Mr. West and the real estate team and what they've been able to do in terms of turning that land over through the years, when Swagelok left, they eventually were able to fill the couple buildings that were there that were left behind. Denortec, of course, was there, and Fifth Synetic located there. But since that time, they've not been able to sell any land to any other industrial type uses. And I think there's a number of reasons for that. Some of that's economic, some of that's shifting of those things in general in Northeast Ohio. And it's important to note that what they have sold have not been industrial. They've been what we would call soft uses. So it was the skilled nursing facility on Capitol that's now their property for that. They sold property for Vista Springs. Vista Springs, another soft use. They sold property to Lake Health. And Lake Health does not have any defined plans for that property, is my understanding, but nonetheless, that's a soft use. And then, of course, Concord Township's acquisition of 7 acres. So I disagree with Mr. Monroe to some degree as to what that property is and is likely to be just based on the realities of the way it's been developing. That doesn't mean that we would close the door to proper light industrial back there. Au contraire, that would be fantastic. But I think, when you talk to the county port authority and you talk about their economic, the way they're trying to sell different areas of Concord, of Lake County, their opinion is that, that area is really Discovery and Capitol is really best going to be suited in the future as office park, high-end office park, maybe something like a data center. These sort of new uses, corporate type uses, is probably the more likely scenario for future development. And that, of course, doesn't mean that door is closed on light industrial. So I do disagree with Mr. Monroe on that assumption that somehow what we are doing, we believe that what we are doing, and not necessarily, I'm not even referring to this zoning text amendment that's being discussed. I'm referring to just overall some of the zoning changes that have been made through the years, whether it's Capital District and some other changes, tweaks. We've tried to bring that more in line with where the marketplace is going. And so I just kind of wanted to point that out. So thanks.
Okay, let's go on to July financial statements.
Mr. Chairman, I will make a motion to approve the July financial statements as presented from the fiscal officer.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We have to set the public hearing for the proposed amendments to the Concord Township zoning resolution regarding the innovative site, PD overlay district, and other amendments as recommended by the zoning commission, further outlined in the attached letter dated August 2nd, 2017. That's got to be set within 30 days, and the only meeting we have within 30 days is, I believe,
The 16th.
our August 16th meeting.
Yep,
That's correct.
that's fine.
Do you want to set that for 6:30? And move like office hours to 6? How's your schedule looking?
4, we could do it at 7,
I could do that.
which 6:30?
I could,
Okay.
I could do 6:30.
So you're gonna do the public hearing at 6:30 and office hours at 6?
Yeah.
I think that gives folks enough time to get home from work and all that.
Okay.
Well, I imagine I'll be here.
Okay. At 6:30, office hours, 6 p.m.
All right, Heather, I'll talk to you about some things to look at. Vote on Resolution 2017-22, resolution by Concord Township Board of Trustees to adopt and implement the actions prescribed in the multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan submitted by the Lake County Emergency Management Agency for review and certification by the Federal Emergency Management, FEMA.
I so move.
Chris, second?
I'll second that. Do we want Chief to talk about that?
Chief?
Just kind of give an explanation of all that?
So the Lake County Hazard Mitigation Plan is basically looking at all the hazards or potential hazards in Lake County and addressing those and putting them in report form for FEMA. There's one hazard or one FEMA site that came up was Route 608. The houses along is at I believe Jordan Creek. It looks at flooding potential, earthquake potential, anything like that that could cause a disaster in our response to that. So that's what that
Yeah, just to remind people, in 608, there was 4 houses, 5 properties with FEMA funds and state funds that took those houses and were able to use that for flood mitigation. That basically was a runoff of Kelly, Summerwood, Crossroads, all the water that came down the hill. Vote on Resolution 2000.
And that's a 5-year plan.
5-year plan. Thank you.
It's undevelopable.
Developable.
Undevelopable. There's because of the flood mitigation. There's only it's very narrow what can be done with that property.
You have no idea.
Yeah.
There's one house that still has to be removed.
Yeah, there's one house that still has to be removed.
Right.
You want to,
we do that?
we have a motion, we have a second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would also make a motion, this relates to Resolution 2017-23, authorizing the fiscal officer to certify assessed street lighting to the county auditor for the tax year 2017, with such assessed street lighting being collectible in the calendar year 2018.
Second.
Sorry, what? 2018, in the calendar year 2018.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. Deb, Resolution 2017-24, Daniel Maxon as the Concord Community Day Citizen of the Year.
This-
He's not here, right? He's not watching? He's not gonna be
He's
ruined?
not here.
He's at a ball game.
We don't want it to, is it a surprise still?
No, it's not.
No.
It's not a surprise,
I don't like when it gets ruined.
but I would like to read it. Resolution 2017-24, Concord Community Day 2017, Citizen of the Year, Daniel Maxon. Whereas Daniel Maxon, friend, neighbor, and good citizen of Concord Township for over 30 years, has, through his dedication to home, family, community, and profession, consistently set the finest example for the values of good citizenship. And whereas Dan moved to Ohio in his late teens and graduated from Mentor High School in 1975 and Hiram College in 1979, he received his first master's degree in education from Cleveland State University in 1982 and his second degree from John Carroll in 1987. Dan worked for Euclid Schools as a teacher and varsity coach and became their athletic director before retiring in 2011, and now serves on the Hiram College Alumni Executive Board. And whereas Dan became the volunteer docent for the Old Stone School, Concord Township's history repository, in 2016, and has been integral in facilitating programs and hosting open houses at the schoolhouse, providing greater public access. And whereas Dan is a valued and active contributor to the betterment of Concord Township through his countless volunteer hours and committed service to our community, now therefore be it resolved that we, the Concord Township Board of Trustees, Lake County, State of Ohio, on behalf of the residents of Concord Township, do hereby with great privilege recognize and pay honor and tribute to Dan Maxon as the Concord Township Citizen of the Year for 2017. I move that we approve this resolution.
I happily second that.
I do too. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Also aye.
Passed, there we go. Vote for Mylar Concord Ridge Phase 5 Residential Conservation Development Flat Plan.
Mr. Chairman, because this is a PUD, we actually have to have a vote before we can sign, so I so move.
Second?
All in favor say aye.
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 Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion for promotion of probationary firefighter paramedic Leonard Meek to regular part-time firefighter paramedic effective July 27th, 2017.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye. I would like to recommend promotion of probationary firefighter paramedic Callahan Henderson to regular part-time firefighter paramedic effective July 27th, 2017. I move that we promote him.
I will second that.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
I would make a motion to grant the Service Department permission to advertise on bids on the Gallant Way Road reconstruction project that Mr. Kreska previously outlined in his remarks.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Items voted at staff meeting, the fire department station duty sign-up policy number 1005 was rescinded. The fire department approved staffing policy in replacement of that, number 1022, service department snow barricades. Reinstall is going to be $15, and the zoning department employees attended the state APA conference in Athens, Ohio on September 28th and 29th, and that had 2 A's. Future meeting announcements, we will have the BZA here August 9th at 7 p.m. at Town Hall. August 12th, Community Day starting at 8 a.m. here at Town Hall campus. August 17th, we will have our
16th.
16th, August 16th, we will have office hours at 6 p.m. Public hearing will start at 6:30 p.m. My guess is that will go late. The trustees meeting is to follow, but no earlier than 7:30. And I will close the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I need a resolution.